So somebody specifically wrote and asked me about psychology and non-duality. And really, psychology has nothing to do with the true freedom of who you are. Like, who you are is free right now. It doesn't matter about your psychology. It doesn't matter about the conditions and the way you're made up. Like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a grumpy person or if you only like to make love when you're dressed as a baby, or you like as a grown person to be given the bottle, or you're grumpy or mean or a thief, or have a job you hate, or have a cheating partner or a narcissistic partner. Actually, none of these things in actuality matter, because freedom is right here no matter what's happening in this crazy world. And I think sometimes I maybe give the impression that all these things need to be sorted out before awakening can happen. But awakening can happen at any time. Hello, my beauty. Hello, my beauty. Hello, my beauty. Yeah, you're beautiful. You were so good with the other doggy, sweetie. I was very pleased with you. It doesn't matter if you're passive aggressive or acting out childhood dynamics. You don't have to be clean of that. The freedom is right here. It doesn't matter all your problems, what you've been, the way you are. The freedom is here. The concept of doership or no doership, or I or not I, all of those are concepts, all of their ideas. And the freedom is this, what's happening here. This alive presence, no matter what. You can be free in a jail cell. You can be free locked in the toilet. You could be free with cancer. You can be free with an asshole of a partner, with 10 kids. You can be free in every situation. There's nothing which can hinder freedom, because freedom is what's happening. It's seeing the divine in the ugly and the beautiful. It's seeing that in actuality there is no ugliness or beautifulness. That this is freedom, life is freedom. The very appearance of everything is freedom. There is nothing you need to do in order to get to freedom, because you are already free. However, after working with people in this subject for many years now, not that many, but it feels like many years, I began to realize that sometimes when people are really suffering, they need practical human advice, and they need to be snapped out of using non-duality to not act. And sometimes the person and the psychology needs to be dealt with to understand why the mind keeps dragging or identifying in time. And it's not really that person that does it, it's just an energy that comes up, this seeking energy, which overinvests in the timeline and believes that happiness is found in an object that you're going to arrive one day in doing something. And you can get into the mentality that one day you're going to arrive when you sort out your psychology, which isn't true either. That's not true. I can tell you there's lots of psychological issues that Lisa can tidy up. You can work endlessly on your psychological issues. All of us have psychological issues and imbalances. It's just part of being human. But there is, I think, advice which can help your humans settle. And at some point, you'll be humbled enough by this subject to take that advice. At first, you'll be like, no, nothing to do with the story. There's no doer, there's no I. It's not my fault, no doership. I can sit in bed all day because there is nobody and there is nothing. And I'm really depressed, but there is nobody and there's nothing I can do, but I feel awful. And at first, you'll have that attitude, but then you'll be humbled by it. So I was kind of super lucky with the way it happened. I got into Buddhism for 5 years and I had a Buddhist practice. And before that, I'd been into psychology and understanding self before that, but I got into Buddhism. And then I came across Advaita, and then like really neoadvaita, like Tony Parsons, Nathan Gill. I used to go and see them in London. And then after meeting them and lots of awakenings, then I began to really look at the psychology of Lisa and what she was seeking for in time and the identification in the personality structure. So it's like, then after I'd got into Buddhism, the neoadvaita, I'd understood the concept, I'd had awakenings, then I began to tidy the cage of Lisa, like really understand some of her deep suffering. And at the same time listening to Advaita and Roger and all these things, but I really began to see through the bullshit which would go on inside of me. So I'll give you an example of, so that happened. So I did the Buddhism for about 5 years, then there was a couple of years of just really intense neoadvaita, and then there was 4 years living with Roger, and then after I left Roger, I had a huge awakening in Bali. But I've been having many awakenings along the time, that spectrum. But when I lived at Roger's house, we lived in the middle of nowhere, really the middle of nowhere. You'd be shocked if you went there. Some people have been there because Roger offers retreats there now. And when I first went there, the first year, I couldn't drive. So I was really stuck there. And I think the nearest little village is like an hour's walk away, 45 minutes walk away. And when I was there for those 3 years, I really processed a lot of stuff that was happening in me and really saw a lot of dynamics. So I'll give you an example. One was the assumption of how, so say between me and Roger, like the assumption of how a relationship should look. And if it didn't look like that, it meant that we shouldn't be together. Which now, I think I was actually accurate when I look back, that me and Roger weren't that great in relationship terms. We were really good in friendship terms and as teacher and student, but relationship terms, we weren't very good. But when I was there, I would get upset about the relationship dynamics and I couldn't handle that. So it would end up building and building and building, and then I'd have a big meltdown about it. And it basically is a sticking of ideas. Like I had an idea of what my relationship or what a relationship was and what should happen. And when it didn't happen, I would take it for a period of time. I would suppress it and take it, and then I would have a big explosion, a big emotional explosion. And actually, when I look back, I think that I was actually really accurate. The problems in the relationship don't lead to an ideal romantic relationship. Now being 10 years older, I understand that, but being first big relationship, I didn't understand that. But I couldn't handle it emotionally. So eventually I would suppress my feelings, suppress it, and then it would end up being a huge drama, and big, like, crying and argument would happen. And that, psychologically, I dissected. So that, I would trace it back to my childhood and what happened in my childhood. And I would look at those dynamics, because when those dynamics played, there was no way I could even listen to non-duality. I was so involved in being angry or being upset that I couldn't even consider listening to non-duality. So I would lay in bed and I would feel the feelings. I would learn where they were in my body. For some reason, I got it in my head that it was important to learn where the feelings were arising in my body, to feel them, to put my personal attention into the feelings, and to understand what they were saying. So if they were saying, I hate him, I would then say it inside me, and then I would look to see if there was someone else in which that had happened with. And I could trace a lot back to me and my brother's relationship. My brother had a huge influence on me growing up. And this was really helpful to see this through the years with Roger. So I had enough time and space there to do this. So when I had big emotions coming up, rather than going and getting in an argument, I would explore what was happening in my physical body. And sometimes they were so intense, I would start shaking. And I think this is what's happening in people all the time. So you get a feeling come up. So say you feel a feeling that you're alienated where you are, and you act out. Rather than looking at the filter that's arising in your body, you go and you act out, and you decide that you've got to move and that this isn't the right place for you. And you go on a big storyline about how this isn't the right place for you, you've got to live somewhere else. And then this keeps repeating through your life, that you can never settle anywhere. But if you were to actually explore that filter that's happening in your body, you'll begin to see that it's a brain dynamic. And that might or might not stop, but you understand it, and you understand that the more that you run away from that brain dynamic, the more that you actually encourage it, because you'll get to the next place and you'll have the same feelings more than likely about it. And or you'll do the same thing. Like maybe you create the alienation by doing certain things. So you'll just keep acting it out again and again and again. And it will feel really real. And it will come with this agitation. So you feel agitated. You feel alienated from a place. Like, this isn't my home. I can't get home here. And you start picking out what the problems are repetitively in your brain. And it becomes an obsession in your brain. And then you seek to do something in the future. So you seek to move to another place. Or you just keep telling yourself what assholes people are and how you're in this terrible place. And then you keep going to people to try to find a solution. You maybe go to spirit people to try to get rid of spirits in your place, or you keep wanting to talk about it with people, or it keeps going around and round in your head. And to me, if you don't look at that, it will keep repetitively coming up. And if there's seeking energy in it, which it most probably is, then it means that you won't be able to hear non-duality. You'll be drawn into time, into that seeking energy. You'll be drawn to seeking to avoid it. Like to say, I am in the middle of that when you're feeling really alienated and really overwhelmed emotionally, to try to see that that's not who you are. And it's not even you that's got to see it, but to try to not suffer that is really difficult. It depends if you're practicing like I am, or staying in consciousness, or you're in the neoadvaita, which is very much like just whatever happens, happens. But this is a big weight of suffering. So when I work with people, often what they're doing is they're coming with emotional or psychological problems. And I have no issue working with that. I'm quite happy to. I feel like I'm quite skilled because I've worked through it through myself. Like I think I had some psychological barriers to get over because of some events that happened in my childhood. And there's still something that I process and still something I have to work with, but I feel like I'm very aware of them now, so I'm not acting out a lot through them. And they might come up strong, but there's not identification with it like in going into massive stories and being lost around it. But it's still something I have to work with, some traumas from childhood or some issues from childhood. But it's not something that runs my life anymore, and I'm so aware when I'm doing it because I can feel it instantly. Whereas a lot of people are totally unconscious about this. So I feel like I'm really good at guiding you into what's happening psychologically. And basically, what you want to do is you want to feel the feeling without avoiding it. And if you can transfer it into a more positive feeling. But the goal of it is to be absolutely present, where at the same time without anyone being present. And that, so it's like you're being present, but it's also seeing so clearly that there's nobody present. So it's like totally letting in all the colors of this life rather than pushing things into time, like trying to avoid things and getting caught up in your psychology and keep going around on it. But you also want to be aware that that's not the goal. Like if you believe that you've got to keep ironing out all your issues and have this perfect mentality and that's your goal, then that will become your new God in a way. But also not avoiding it, because this is a total embracing of everything. This isn't a cut off sitting in consciousness or sitting in I am away from the body. The consciousness and the I am is in the senses, is in the world, it's in everything. It's coming to the center of feeling. And that's where freedom is. So that feeling's going off, that somebody makes you feel really bad or really insignificant or really stupid, that feeling fires away like fireworks in your body. And it's really staying with that, not running into a story about what an asshole they are or what this is or what that is. You can have thoughts, but not this seeking energy that identifies with it. And it's really coming to embrace all types of feelings and being emotionally smart, so you act from more positive feelings rather than negative feelings. A lot of the time, people in our society are acting from negative feelings. And you'll find that your life, your external life, changes when you do this. But again, you don't want to put overemphasis on this activity of you solving yourself in time. So it's like coming to this middle road where you work on yourself to an extent, you begin to get to know yourself. And then at the same time realizing that freedom is here no matter what, in hell or in heaven. And that ultimately there is no hell or there is no heaven, which is super beautiful. So it's not swinging either ways. Like I used to be more thinking that I could just speak non-duality and that would be heard, and that was my job. But then I realized that that wasn't so balanced for people. Even if I told them to deal with their psychology, I found that I had to incorporate both in order for people that listened to me to incorporate it too. And it's like not going too obsessive one way where you completely ignore all human dynamics, but not going too obsessively the other way where you're constantly like contemplating your navel and contemplating what's going inside. Like neither is the answer. It's like not being too stuck on any one way. And some people love this and some people dislike it. And there's different personality types that I've realized as well. Like there's some people that need to stop thinking about themselves and some people that need to think about themselves more. So it's not like there's one way for everybody. There's some people that contemplate their navel too much and some people not enough. And I refuse to, when somebody comes and they say they're having psychological issues or that they can't get out of the morning of bed because they're depressed, I refuse anymore to say there's nobody there to be depressed. Even though I think there's beauty in that, I also see that there's practical things that can help depression. And you don't need to live the rest of your life in depression. And more than likely while you're depressed, you're seeking for an answer in the timeline, so non-duality can't be heard. But I'm open to the idea that you could be depressed and be free. I'm open to that idea too. Who knows what this manifests like? It could manifest as anything. also there's this beauty in listening to these talks. I don't know if you can feel it sometimes, that you just like zone into that energy and flow into that energy. And it's not so much about what I'm saying, it's just like a flow happening. And I know I speak a lot about myself, but I say it to try to help. I'd actually prefer not to share so much of myself on the internet, but I actually say it to try to help. And also, maybe there is a dynamic. I say it for myself also because I don't want to give a false impression. Like, something that's important to my character is honesty. I really value honesty, and I really have all types of feelings going off. I just had a thought when I drank my coffee. I have a tendency to choke on things. It just is. In Chinese medicine, they say it's different personality types, and I choke on things a lot. And I just suddenly had a thought, I've never choked live in a talk or on a live stream before. And then I had a thought, and then I thought about the embarrassment of doing that. So it's not about not having feelings. It's really embracing the feelings. What the mind does is the mind imagines not having, say, embarrassment, and then it feels good from imagining not having these complicated feelings. And then from that feeling good, it imagines being free, and then it feels a feeling of freedom, and that's not it. Like, my emotions became a lot more simple because they're empty. Your emotions are empty. They don't belong to anyone. They're just coming out of nowhere. They don't belong to a me or a you. They're just happening, and that's their freedom. But it's not about not having them, and they become less complicated. Like, sometimes I can get angry, but when I was younger, I could be in rages sometimes about something for hours, whereas now I tend to get angry and get over it quite quickly. But also, we're not really sure what anger is or who it belongs to. It keeps falling over because it's on my scarf. So, it's really coming to the simplicity of these emotions. It's the disappearance inside everything, that everything in this life is empty. And it's not about coming back or moving to this consciousness or I am and not feeling. It's that the consciousness and the I am is in everything. It's in the feelings, it's in the world, it's in the appearances. It's non-separation. It's in the feelings. The reason the feelings stay for such a long, drawn-out period is because your mind keeps repeating it. Your thoughts keep repeating it, which can happen to anyone. Like, you can have repetitive thoughts that can happen free or not free, but it's like when it goes on for a long period of time, it's normally in the identification with that feeling and thought. Feelings are free because they don't belong to anyone. That's their freedom. But there's so many cool things like that begin to happen as you go down this path, because on the human level you have cool experiences too. So what happened for me is really getting to know my body and my emotions, and I suspect that happens in a lot of people's paths because you drop into the body. When you're identified, you tend to be in the head area, and then when you have these awakenings, you're that squashed identification that's in the head disappears, and then you sort of drop into everything, the external and the internal, and you become really sensitive to your feelings. And when you become really sensitive to your feelings, you can begin to, and it's not you doing it, it's something that happens, it's nobody's doing, is that the energy begins to act from positive feelings. That was funny. I thought I just saw someone behind me. in the camera. So you can begin to, or what begins to manifest in the body, or what I've noticed, is that the body begins to move towards more of what it wants and positive feelings and being more balanced like that. When you're identified, you're responding out of a lot of avoiding fear and avoiding pain, and you're actually moving to what often you don't want. And your external life changes when the body begins to move towards what it does want, and it becomes easy. Life is so much effort when you're identified with the outcome, identified with time, identified with getting and believing that you're going to find love in the next action. That love will come in getting something in time. That I will arrive when I do this, when I get this. But amazing things happen when you stop identifying with that. You just follow the wants, and there's an innocence there. There's non-expectation or lack of expectation, so it manifests as it manifests. And often as it manifests is perfect. But there's like this energetic thing that happens. It's not quite the law of attraction, but it's like attracts like, but it's nobody's doing, it's happening. And really, ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like, that's part of the awakening, seeing that good or bad doesn't matter, that nothing has meaning. But it's just coming back to more of a natural flow on the human level. I feel like humans have got out of their natural flow and they're just living in this mental box. Wow. Have I talked a lot? Me thinks so. I am very good at talking.